Hi, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon. Welcome to Industry Chats with Affixify. I am host and founder of Affixify, Jasmine Saliga. I am just so excited to have my new friend, Sarah Stahl, on today. Sarah and I met through LinkedIn, which is like the number one source of my friendships these days, it seems. And I spoke with Sarah last week. I mean, it's been like only a week, and I told her, I'm like, we got to get you on Industry Chats because Sarah has so much value to add when it comes to both short-term rental and hotelier marketing. And I mean, she was saying things that I'm like, I know nothing, and I have a marketing degree compared to Sarah. So I am super happy to introduce you today, Sarah, to our audience. And that's my intro, but tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us what you do, all of those great things before we jump in.
Yeah, before I want to just address what you said about LinkedIn. Like LinkedIn has totally changed. And we were actually texting the day after we met, and I'm like, is this crazy that we're absolute strangers and doing a project together? I think that that's where really neat things happen.
Yes.
But yeah, I am Sarah Stahl. I'm a marketer by trade, operator by experience, and a former accidental architect on Alabama's most successful glamping resort team. It's probably
Wow.
like the coolest way I could say that
I love
without like showing all the chaos that happened over the last couple of years. I've got my start in tourism about a decade ago.
it.
And that was back when marketing meant like brochures and a whole lot of hope. And
Yeah.
since then, I've been on the government side of hospitality. I actually was a former tourism director for a local community. And then I moved over to marketing at Retreat, where I was entrusted to assist in the growth process for a 21 rental resort from the ground up, literally from I
Gosh.
was hired for marketing, but has been a part of operations, guest experience, brand positioning, and developing an influencer strategy that drove 93% direct bookings, which we were starting to get into that story a little bit, but that was all accidental just because of marketing and not what I know about short-term rentals or knew about short-term rentals at the side or at the beginning.
Yeah.
So recently, I pivoted to contract work where I help owners and operators break free from OTA dependency, simplify their systems, and just get them enjoying and running their businesses again. And I work with a gentleman named Charles, who I call my secret weapon. No, you cannot have his email. And together we focus on booking strategy, influencer partnerships, and then making sense of tech stack sanity, all with a very personal touch. And today I'm just so excited to be having this conversation with you, especially in light of all of the shifts that are coming in the hospitality realm for 2025.
Amazing. I'm like, let's just take your intro and create a short and tell the world because what you just said, I mean, you're touching on all of the things that people are wanting to know, including, I mean, this wasn't in our agenda today, but I just talked to a hotelier not even a week ago that's figuring out influencer strategy, booking strategy. So, I mean, what you're touching on, as you know, you're a operator, you've worked in this for a long time. I mean, these are the topics people want to know about. And I think today we're going to try to touch on a lot in kind of a short amount of time. I foresee maybe a part 2 coming, but let's start.
Awesome.
I mean, yeah, I think there's so much to share. And don't worry, Charles, we won't track you down, but I want to meet him too.
Okay.
But I think like starting on this topic of tech transforming the guest experience, and
Yeah.
there's so much there. I think guest experience to me, and I've always been on the technology side, is a bit of an overused term, kind of like AI, right? What is, in your experience, like what in your world was an actual tech tool? Maybe you don't use the name, maybe you do, but that really actually enhanced experience. Or do you believe tech is just an asset, but it's really about the people? Like, where do you stand on that?
So I think tech is vital. Where I've kind of learned is we scaled so quickly. So when I was hired, they were at month 6 with 6 units, and within 2 years we went to 21 units, a event venue, and a spa. Right. So we had to have tech in order to continue to scale the business that fast. So to me, it's vital. In the short-term rental world, when you're talking 1 to 2 units, you can get away with doing a lot more, but we're even working with some people who have limited tech, and the number one problem with tech limitations is double bookings. And that
Yeah.
is to me, that's detrimental. Like, as soon as you have an experience where 2 guests are showing up at the same time to be in the same
Yeah.
unit, you've demolished your brand, because as soon as that shows up on a Google review, especially if you don't have many Google reviews, I mean, you're practically done unless you're reliant on the OTAs where all that stuff gets hidden. And, so I think tech is vital. One of the first things that I did was we switched to HostAway. I have no problem saying names. And we did that because I was like, we're not having any double booking issues. Like, I didn't even know how bad the problem was. I was just thinking like a marketer and a customer experience person, and was like, we need to be able to give them the best possible experience. And there's no way we can track this growth and these units in a spreadsheet. And then when they're clean, right, then there's the operation side of things. So we needed a powerful tool that could keep our operations running smoothly. Which to me, if I could back up to your original statement about, AI and technology, there's so much talk about what AI can do, will do, maybe one day, right? But I don't feel like that helps
Right.
an operator today. So HostAway helped us
Yeah.
in the immediate, HostAway helped us in the immediate with the biggest and the simplest thing is automated messages, right? So in the back end, I created a
Right.
flow for messaging from the time they booked to the time they left, right? So there were different cadences of different messages depending on what type of unit they were in. Some units have different checkout requirements. Some units have different amenities that they need to know about. So being able to have all of that, the automated workflow for messaging happen in the back end without us having to manage it, allows us to trust the tech and then give the experience to the guests when they're on the property.
That's amazing. Yeah, I think you hit on something really important there that those of us in technology don't always think about is the impact, yes, on a great guest experience, but what about whenever there's I'm thinking my family and I travel to the beach the first week of June every year, and we do a rental instead of a hotel because there's a lot of us. And I'm just imagining that feeling if we showed up with our kids who are so excited, and this is all we talk about all year, and the house was double booked. I mean, I can't even imagine the
And
impact
some
on,
people are trapped. Yeah, and some people, like, I don't know how far you're driving. How far are you driving to the beach?
5 hours. So yeah,
Okay,
about 5 hours.
So you're coming at like 10, 11 at night if you're leaving like after work. The situation that you're putting your guests in is just not worth it to me.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
investing in the technology and having a good experience, knowing that you're dependent, or knowing that your guest can depend on a good experience every single time, because we have human error, right? There's
Yeah.
always going to be human error, but with technology, there's a lot less human error. And
Yeah.
people, they forget where they booked. That was one question we got all
Yes.
the time. I'm pretty sure I booked with you guys like 3 months ago, but I can't find the email anywhere because the email goes to spam. So the good thing, that's a whole other story. I feel like my marketing career got derailed by being put in a heavy operations role and marketing role, but really I'm seeing the good in it, right? Because I was the one on the phone with customers. I was the one reading the Instagram messages. I was the one getting emails for bookings, right? So I've been able to see every side of a customer issue. And as soon as I was able to locate a problem, I would create a new workflow in our tech, right? Or I would update the
Smart.
website
So
to
smart.
reflect that. So those
Yeah.
questions became less and less and less over time as we were solving the problems with the technology that we have. And I mean, we could go deep in what we built, but I decided to stay high level on the automation
Yeah.
messages. That's one that affects everybody.
Oh, it does. Well, and that actually makes me think of the hard work you put in, which we're going to talk about next, of like influencer marketing and how these influencers, I'm sure, set this incredible expectation of the experience. And then if the tech doesn't support that experience when someone arrived, oh, I saw this on Instagram, here I am, that's a huge issue. So tell me, and I think that's a good segue into like how that all plays together, talking about your influencer strategy. I mean, all of it. Like how
Okay.
did you, yeah, how did you feel like your influencer strategy impacted the guest experience? And then tell us about that strategy, because I know people are listening specifically to understand that. That was a huge interest point when we announced the webinar.
Yeah. So I'll go ahead and just lay this out there. I feel like all the successes I had at retreat were by accident, just because I'm curious to ask questions and know marketing and technology. So I also did not set out to become an expert in influencer marketing. I was just trying to solve a problem that was keeping me up at night.
Yeah.
And I've lost a lot of sleep over over a lot of this. But so back when we were first building Retreat, we did not have a massive marketing budget. Still did not to this day. We never had more than $30,000 a year to spend on marketing. I'm just gonna be honest and
Yeah.
open with
Yeah.
that one. But we had major competition,
Yeah.
nor did we have an army of staff, but we still had a lot to accomplish. It was just a small team, a big vision, and this wild idea that we wanted to create a place that people fell in love with. But how do you tell that story at scale with no marketing budget?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, it's very challenging. It's extremely challenging. That's why you get so many people asking, like, how do we go viral, right? But I would suggest something better than going viral, and that's working with creators. Um, we were also buried, in STR chaos, double bookings, OTA dependency. So I knew we needed to stand out in a different way. We started really small. We sent like a couple of invites to people that I actually knew personally, locally, that were in the outdoor industry, and I considered them like regional influencers, if you will. I hate using the word
Right.
influencer because people automatically think like Kim Kardashian, but that is not what I'm talking
Yeah.
about. We worked with a different creator every week for 2 years. The majority of them had between 1,200 and 3,000 followers. And
That is, I
so
mean,
yeah, because they each have their own pocket of
niche.
influence of
Right.
people who love them, love their personality, trust them, trust what they have to say. Um, so after, I think in total over 2 years, I personally invited about 5 creators to work with us.
Wow.
Otherwise, it just became like this machine because
Yeah.
the property was so beautiful and there was so much to do in the area, that the creators who came, I put very few stipulations on creators,
Okay.
and because there's a whole issue in the creator economy, and that's creators are burnt out. These are also
Yeah.
entrepreneurs trying to build their brands, their businesses. So they're hustling. They're doing a lot of free complimentary work that are burning them out. And knowing that, I I created the system of, okay, once we got an approach, and an approach usually came through Instagram or TikTok,
Mm.
because they saw one of their fellow creators creating, and they're like, "Ooh, I want to come. Ooh, I want to come." So for every creator we had like 3 to 5 requests from more creators. And so I said yes to everybody. I only said no to like 2 or 3 people, and that's because they just hadn't. I could tell they hadn't created in a while, and their content was just like not
Yeah.
outdoorsy or anything. But most of the people who contacted us cared very much about their feed, their audiences, being honest. So the only stipulations I had was pick these things as part of your stay. So for one night they had to do something, for 2 nights they had to do something, for 3 nights they had to do something, and they could only stay during a Sunday or a Thursday, so no weekends, because
Sure.
that's massively profitable for us at Retreat, and we weren't going to give up that profitability. But you always have vacancies during the week, and there's always a place to put somebody. And they had to pay the taxes and our cleaning fee. So it
Oh,
cost
wow.
them about $63 to stay. So nobody stayed for free. Everybody paid something. So we didn't lose any money. And the requirements were very low. So I think another mistake people make with creators is, okay, this creator's going to come and they're going to turn my business around. No, they're not. No, they're not. They're going to come and you're going to keep building that momentum. And here
Right.
and there, you're going to grow your direct bookings, right? But to put it all on one creator, one, that damages the relationship. It's
Yeah.
not a very reasonable expectation. So my expectations for creators were low. I was just like, come do these things and really you rest, because I know, and I didn't even tell them, I didn't frame it to them this way. I just created rules that put them in a space where they could sit and enjoy the property, because they didn't
Yeah.
have all this content that they had to do. But their content ended up being so incredible just because they got to experience the resort just like a full paying guest would as well.
Wow.
And they just told their story. So no
Oh my gosh.
stipulations. I'm like, say it in your voice, create whatever content you want. I just want one photo and one reel. That's all I want. And so having the momentum of having a creator there every single week for 2 years is what contributed to the 93% direct bookings and 1 million in revenue. So
Wow.
not putting that all on the shoulders of like one creator, but just building that system.
What a phenomenal story. And in fact, what you're telling me resonates. It's all the little things that add up to big things. So instead of going after I laugh when you and I had talked about the Kim Kardashian influencers, because that's kind of
Oh
what
yeah.
people think about,
Yeah.
you know? But for me
Yeah.
personally, like on my own as a consumer, I tend to go for the micro influencers to follow, because you feel a little like safer, like it's more curated, like you don't question the things that they're talking about as much based on, well, what are they getting for this? So even as a consumer, what you're saying resonates. And I feel like there are a ton of owners and operators and marketers that can benefit from what you're telling us, because it's not about the one big influencer that's going to get you a ton of money. It's
Mm-mm.
about consistency over time with those that
Mm-hmm.
have the niche following.
So, I was the only marketer on the team, and I was like only one of three in operations. So for me to be able to generate the level of content needed to show up on social media, to be heard or seen in any kind of trusted capacity, I couldn't do it. I wouldn't have been able to keep up with
Yes.
that. Plus, I
Yeah.
just, as a marketer, I know the trust level for anything in the marketplace is atrocious. I mean, nobody
Yeah.
wants to look at an ad anymore. Everyone assumes what the brand is pushing out is the best. And they
Yeah.
already know going into it, this is probably not going to be the experience I get when I get there.
Yeah.
Because I know that brands are going to tell me a story to sell me something to get me there. So the reliance on creators is so high because creators say what it is. They just give their story, and you can see with your own eyes like what the experience was like. Even if a creator had a bad experience and they just show their story, you could at least make up your own mind about what that was like or what that would be like for
Yeah.
me, and it's easier for them to put themselves in those shoes.
It's more authentic versus
Yeah.
the perfect story being told to the consumer. And I think you're spot on. We're just fatigued, I think, as consumers from there's a lot of marketing. There's a lot thrown at us. And so I think what your strategy was just incredibly smart. And I believe
And
there's a
what do I
lot of
trust? Yeah, it's
yes.
like nobody, I mean, I'm a consumer, I'm a marketer and a consumer, and I know that the trust level is low.
Yeah.
So I have to think about that. And that's why I spend so much time on storytelling, and not just any storytelling, but I Velcro myself to any customer that will allow me to tell their story.
Yeah.
So in these creator relationships, we actually developed more long-term relationships with some of them, and they have custom coupon codes through Hostaway, and that's a whole other tech story where Charles developed a custom API connectivity between Hostaway and HubSpot. So we actually, all through automation, track. We have a system, or we had a system that if a creator sold 6 nights, they got one free that they could either gift or stay again for more content
Yeah.
to sell more, and that was all automated. So the
Wow.
booking codes were tracked and sent to HubSpot every time a
Mhm.
completed stay happened, not just a booking, but the guest completed their stay. That would trigger a workflow to let the creator know you've earned one night. And I even had like pretty like a scratch off. You are you've earned 2 of 6 till your free stay. So they knew exactly where they were.
That's great.
Communication was very open. Um, Having to manually track all that would have been insane, and we would have lost trust and relationship with our creators. But the creators see those emails, they know exactly where they're at. Then it causes them to push a little harder because they're like, oh gosh,
Yeah.
I only need one more to get my free stay, you know. And that's just running on autopilot in the background,
I love it.
and
I love
that's
it.
AI and technology working for you, so
Yeah.
that the humans on your team can give the good customer service and can continue
Hmm.
being creative in developing
Right.
relationships that build your business.
It's an incredible way to leverage technology while keeping the human touch in hospitality, which I find to be hard for people to verbalize. And so what you just did was verbalize that. And talking on the topic of direct bookings, there's also this topic of course, OTAs and Airbnb. So in our last few minutes, I thought we would talk a little bit about Airbnb, kind of what's coming for the industry. And my friend Katrina Andrews, gave us an awesome question. So Katrina, I know you're here. Thank you. You had actually sent in a question prior, and we changed our agenda a little to kind of talk about your question first, and then go into Airbnb in the future. So Sarah, why don't you tell us what that question was from Katrina, and we'll talk through it a little bit.
Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and read her question. It kind of threw me a little, so I had to ask for clarification, but we'll just kind of go through it. So Katrina asked, I think in terms of Airbnb, I have seen some tests of hotels trying to compete more directly with the Airbnb model. And she had a very specific example of a standalone townhouse rentals that she sent me the link, and it was like townhomes by Marriott, and it looked very direct booking, like a direct booking site that you would see through Hostaway or something, but it had the Marriott logo. So she wanted to talk through that experiment, and if that brands are doing it right to like mimic Airbnb. Hopefully, I'm not messing this up, Katrina. Mimic Airbnb, but with their own direct booking. So my initial thought is that it's been interesting to watch hotels mimic Airbnb. Obviously, that says a lot about Airbnb and doing it right, and then wanting to kind of like shift that mindset of travelers into what they're doing directly as well. But I feel like the problem might be that they're borrowing the aesthetic, but not the experience. Um, and she mentioned that, and I didn't dive too deep. It was like just a couple minutes before the call, but she had mentioned that the price is like 3 times what you would see on Airbnb. So it's like, well, does Marriott have the ability to do that, right? And so I really want to dive deeper into that, but I feel like the more we've seen Marriott, they just purchased Postcard Cabins recently. I think that was in December. And Hyatt just purchased somebody else. And they're all in like the glamping industry. And so I could tell that they're starting to diversify because the market is changing and traveler demands have drastically changed. And so they're diversifying that portfolio, and then making it feel more authentic to what the traveler was feeling in causing them to go with those other choices over a traditional Marriott hotel. So I think we're going to start to see more of that, as these bigger brands are trying to diversify their lodging offerings.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting because the traditional stay used to just be, I mean, you go to a hotel, you book a hotel, that's your vacation. And clearly, like Airbnb kind of changed the game for us and Verbo, I'm sure too. But I know even again, as a traveler, that's become huge for my family is the ability to
Mm-hmm.
have more of that short-term rental environment. And I still do. I mean, I stay in hotels all the time aside from that, but when you're traveling, for me personally as a family, it makes a huge difference. So
Mm-hmm.
clearly the brands are recognizing that and they're capitalizing on that too, which to me just shows like compliments to the short-term rental market because it's what they're doing is working. And you mentioned glamping. I mean, that's kind of our family's thing. Like I don't camp, but I will glamp. And so
Yes.
that's kind of that's definitely tapping into something important. And Katrina, I love your thought there. Sarah, what do you think generally, like on this topic of Airbnb? I think there's a lot of changes coming. I was personally happy to see the rate transparency changes coming, but what are your thoughts about Airbnb in 2025? Sounds like there's some big news or updates on the way.
Yeah, I always struggle to do predictions because you just never really know. But I kind of went through the top anticipated changes that are coming because they have kind of like leaked out a little bit. And one of them that caught my attention is AI integration.
Yeah.
So they're anticipating a much heavier use of AI integration across the platform. And what I'm kind of cautious about is I wonder if that's pricing or in support. Because
Yeah.
automated tools don't always account for the nuances of your property, your ideal guest, your market. I know at Retreat, we also use a pricing tool and it kind of jacked us up sometimes unless we were
Interesting.
um, monitoring that on a daily basis. So AI is great. Integrate AI integrations is great. Back to kind of what we were talking about before. If it could do some of the heavy lifting of
Yeah.
things, the processes that would bog you down to give a good guest
Right.
experiences, that's wonderful. But if I would just caution on being too overly reliant.
Yeah.
Um, you mentioned the fee transparency. Is that what you were? Is that
That
what
is
you mentioned
probably,
earlier?
yeah, something that I appreciate the most is you book on Airbnb or others and you get to the end and you're like, this just added $600 to my stay. So I think even that, and I don't know how that, if that's an AI tool or what they're using for that, but for me, I find that to be very helpful. Again, as a consumer, just thinking,
Yeah.
wow, it would be really nice to have that transparency right up front.
I agree. I feel like it's long overdue. And guests have, like you said, they continue to be burnt by surprise feeds once
Yeah.
they get to the end of it. Something we would do at Retreat is actually on our social accounts. We would put the price breakdown really pretty, just like it shows up in Postaway,
I love
as
that.
people are booking. And we would just like a receipt, exactly, so you can see what it was. And then we would break it down and we would get comments like, gosh, I wish they would do concert tickets this way and stuff. So fee transparency is really important. And I think that it's all under the same umbrella of the consumer is fatigued with being
Right.
let's just say lied to in the marketing process, and they're hypersensitive to that. So the
Yeah.
more and Airbnb has enough data to tell them all these things, and so the more transparency, I feel like the better it's going to be for everybody.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
yeah, this one is going to be a tricky one. So their platform policy, that one actually already leaked out, I want to say like last month. Um, and I'm just kind of interested to see how they police this one. So that's somebody books an Airbnb, the hosts are always trying to get them to like, let me have your email and stay in touch with
Yeah.
us, and like they
Right.
shift them, right? So that's kind of the rub between Airbnb and direct booking. Or an owner is that you don't, when somebody books through you through Airbnb, you don't have their email, right? That's why
Yeah.
direct booking is so important, because now you own that customer and you can
Right.
communicate with that. So they're saying they're cracking down on this
Mhm.
off-platform exchange
Ah,
that's happening. And so I'm like, how are they going to police that? Because it's already heavily policed. Anytime we would respond to a guest with a phone number, like let's say a guest was coming in, they were Airbnb guest, it's 11:30 at night, they're like, I'm lost, right? And the
yeah.
only thing we could do is message them in Airbnb, and we're like, well, call us right now and we'll get you there. Airbnb's
Right.
like, no, you can't put a phone number in here. No, you can't put a link in here. Like everything is blocked already. So I'm
Wow.
curious how they're gonna like police that even
Yeah.
further, which they're saying that they are.
I would be very curious. I'll keep an eye on that too, because, I think I've even had, now this was about 4 years ago. We stayed in a awesome condo in Maui, and the owner wrote me and was like, "You're now a VIP and I'll get you a good rate if you email me next time." And I remember being like, "Oh, I didn't know you could do that." And now I don't know, maybe that's totally regulated now and he couldn't have done that later. But
Mm-hmm.
I do see that struggle, because as an owner, you want to own that guest and you want to get them coming back. You want them to be, this condo or this rental is the place they come every year. And for a guest, that makes a lot of sense to avoid those fees. So
Mm-hmm.
I am very curious. And at what line can they stop at? Like there has to be a point where they can't regulate that direct communication. I have no idea.
I'm assuming they're going to use technology, or they already have some technology in place to further that, because the system already knows you're putting a phone number in. I mean, we would even try to get creative. Like we actually didn't want to hurt our relationship with Airbnb. So
Yeah.
that's why we built the influencer marketing strategy, because we're like, we'll build enough demand. We don't have to rely on Airbnb, and the folks that come in through Airbnb, we will respect the platform, right?
Right.
But like in emergency situations, we would try to get creative, and the system wouldn't allow. So I'm like, what
Yeah.
more could they do?
Yeah.
So the last one I'm curious about is they mentioned host services marketplace. And I
Interesting.
don't know what that means, but just off the top of my head, I had mixed feelings with that one, because on one hand, great, hosts get access to vetted help. I
Yeah.
feel like that's what it sounds like. On the other hand, it feels like Airbnb is trying to become the Amazon of hospitality. And if they
Mm,
control your bookings and your operations, where is your leverage? And that's
interesting.
kind of what this whole conversation has been about. Is I think Airbnb, VRBO, Booking.com, they all have a place.
Right.
But what my concern is, in no other industry, and I think this is what you and I were talking about last week, in no other industry have I ever seen this amount of reliance on a third party vendor.
Yes.
So to me, it's like we really have to be careful and think about how much of our business we're handing over to Airbnb, where
Yeah.
I think it should be a gap filler. And
Yeah.
that's how we looked at Airbnb. And my last day at retreat was last week, and we had like a little going away thing. And, I asked the owners, I was like, have you guys been keeping up with what's going on with Airbnb shifts? And they're like, a little bit. And I said, are you concerned about um, any, any shifts in Airbnb? And they're like, no, I mean, that's like 9% of our business.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
there, that's where my heart is. That's where I would like to
Amazing.
see
Yeah.
other owners get to, is
Yeah.
yeah, use these tools to leverage the growth of your business.
Yeah.
Please do not be reliant on them to that capacity.
To that level. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and the fact that there are, because, at Affixify, we work with consultants and agents, their entire business is around recovering OTA revenue and around helping direct booking staff. Clearly this is a heavy reliance when people can now build a secondary business around helping hospitality owners and operators get
Yes.
out of that reliance. So I do think, you're onto something there. And Sarah, tell us as we kind of close out, we've never done this with a guest, but you have a value add and I can't wait. We're going to post about it, but you have like a course, a PDF that you want to share with our audience. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yes.
And we will, of course, post about it as well. But when you mentioned a giveaway, I was like, that's amazing. And I can tell she's a marketer because we don't typically do a giveaway or a value add here, but I love the idea. So for our listeners now, or of course on YouTube later, those who will find this episode through our newsletter, tell us about that value add so that everybody knows about it.
Yeah, so just really quick, I wrote an ebook called From Views to No Vacancies because I've had this conversation several times. That's actually how I've learned the importance of it in the industry as a whole. So I created this, it's about 14-page ebook, and it outlines all of the steps I took, including the email template that I gave to creators in order to work with us. So it's how I developed the creator strategy and then how you can replicate it and develop it yourself. Because one of the things I've heard all the time is people will ask me, how do I start? And I can pretty much guarantee at least 90% of y'all, if you own or operate, have had a creator reach out to you on Instagram and you've ignored it because you weren't sure how to respond to them. So that's what the ebook is. It helps you respond to them in a way that protects your business and grows that relationship so that you can drive more direct bookings yourself.
Amazing. I love it. So we will share probably what would be the best way for our guests or our audience to get that? Should they direct message you? Can they just comment on the post and we'll get it to them? Or do you just want us to share the link and they can jump right in?
Yeah, I mean, all of the above. And I have a website, sarahstahl.com. It's my own personal website, and there's a tab there for it as well.
Love it. Well, we will share it all over. And Sarah, thank you for being my guest today. This has been awesome. And for those listening, thank you for joining in. And for those listening later, you can always find Sarah at sarahstahl.com or on LinkedIn. And we look forward to maybe a second follow-up episode. So Sarah, thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.